Afternoon, everyone. This is David Mayorga, Director of Public Affairs at the Department of Energy. We're about to get started momentarily. Just want to make sure. Abraham, are we live?
We are live.
Fantastic. Madam Secretary, I turn it over to you to kick off our program. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. And hello, everybody. Thanks for taking a little time to come together today. I know how busy everybody is. I'm not sure what the glitch was last week, but I'm so glad we could try again to review really how much you've been able to accomplish in just a little under 4 months, which is why we're convening. Although we're now, I think, 2 weeks past the 100-day marker for this new administration, maybe even a little bit more than that. I want to take the opportunity to reflect, together on what we've been up to at the Department of Energy. I don't know about you, but I'm one of those probably annoying people who like to cross things off my list, check, done, check. In the words of Franklin Roosevelt, for me anyway, happiness lies in the joy of achievement, in the thrill of creative effort. I'd actually say for me, the thrill of completion. So today I want to take joy in our achievements. First though, before we get to the fun stuff, I just want to touch on something that's been on the minds of many people. As you probably heard, late last week, the CDC updated its mask guidance for fully vaccinated people. And that means that for DOE employees or contractors or visitors or anyone for whom it's been at least 2 weeks since the final dose of their vaccine, they're no longer required to wear masks in DOE buildings or sites or facilities. Hallelujah for those for whom that has been an issue. And if you're not fully vaccinated, you are still required to wear a mask. What this doesn't change is that for now, we'll still continue with maximum telework. The DOE COVID-19 coordination team is working with the White House to figure out what that's going to look like when people come back, what to expect of the workplace post-pandemic. So I just want you to know those discussions are taking into account the lessons learned across the federal government. And I'll emphasize that obviously your safety remains paramount to us. Any return to the workplace will follow CDC guidance, and you certainly have my commitment, our team's commitment, that when that changes, we're going to engage all of you in a dialogue about how we return to the physical workplace in an orderly, a safe manner. So in the meantime, let's be patient and keep up the terrific work that we are managing through these Zoom calls and Teams meetings and all of that. And all of that work really has been terrific. For the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to hear some highlights from 10 of our colleagues, a mix of senior leaders and federal staff and lab scientists. And first up is our indefatigable, our inestimable, our incomparable Deputy Secretary of Energy, Dave Turk, who's going to tell us about the big changes that we've overseen within the department itself. Dave, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Madam Secretary. I wish my kids could have heard that introduction, but maybe I'll play them the recording for them. I know I feel incredibly lucky. I think I know the Secretary feels the same way to be part of the Department of Energy. Just the phenomenally important vital missions that we have, whether it's safeguarding our nuclear material, our nuclear weapons, cleanup, the cutting edge science that we do, solving climate change for our US citizens and humanity, incredibly important missions, phenomenal labs, phenomenal facilities, but I think our greatest asset of all, and I know the Secretary shares this, is our people. It's our team dedicated to public service. So I'm going to just run through 5 specific things that the Secretary, the rest of us in the senior management team are doing to help empower and to help support all of you. First piece is to try to make sure that we're bringing greater coherence between our efforts focused on science, on research, development, demonstration, deployment. We do, of course, as I mentioned, cutting edge science that no one else in the world does. I was on the Teams earlier today with the head of our Fermi lab talking about neutrino science, other particle accelerator efforts that we're doing there. Incredibly cutting edge. No one else is doing this kind of work. But especially to solve key challenges like climate change, we really need to rapidly advance from scientific discovery to commercialization and all of those steps in between. As one part of that effort, the Secretary has recreated a new S4 Undersecretary with science and energy together, bringing in the loan program, bringing in the Office of Technology Transitions, bringing our PMAs, our power market administrations together so that we can drive from scientific discovery to commercialization as quickly and as robustly as we possibly can. Just a huge thanks to Kathleen Hogan, our colleague many of you know from her previous stint at DOE, for serving in that undersecretary capacity in an acting manner. We have some phenomenal folks coming in, our new undersecretary candidate who's going through Congress, our new head of office science as well, progressing in Congress as well. So that's one specific, trying to bring some greater coherence, greater alignment among these key efforts that we have at the department. A second key effort is expanding and enhancing our fossil energy office. So as you may have seen, we've now, our fossil energy office is now our fossil energy and carbon management office. But even more importantly than that name is really that expansion and that enhancement of those capabilities to make sure we're bringing those full solutions, that phenomenal expertise we have within that office with Nrel colleagues, with other colleagues working on those incredibly important missions. So that's a second specific change that we've made already. Third set of changes really try to take advantage of the unprecedented energy transition opportunities that we see. It's incredibly dynamic what's happening in energy right now. And at the same time, we have vast inequalities and inequities throughout our society. And we're coming out of a COVID crisis in which we've had many families, many people having job challenges. All three of those phenomena are happening at the same time. And we're trying to really make lemonade out of lemons, as they say, and really try to do some groundbreaking things at the department. So among other things, we've got a new Office of Energy Jobs being empowered like never before to really try to focus, as the Secretary has said, jobs, 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 to really try to move with urgency on that front. We've got a new senior advisor reporting directly to the Secretary on equity. That is a big deal and something that all of us in this administration take incredibly seriously. And we're focused like never before at the department, and this is a work in progress. Many of you are working on this, on place-based solutions, place-based strategies. How do we bring these energy transition opportunities? How do we take advantage of the funding that we've got at the department to focus on jobs, to focus on communities, to empower communities like never before? And thanks to Karen Skelton and others who are working on those incredibly important efforts. So that's a third piece of how we're trying to empower, how we're trying to support you all. A fourth piece, which is incredibly important, even in normal circumstances, and these are of course not normal circumstances, is the resources. The Secretary, myself, others of us spending lots of time with key members of Congress, key committees. Our Secretary has already testified once on our budget. We'll be testifying again on Wednesday on our budget, and yet again, to try to make sure that we have the resources in the FY22 request, working with OMB, working with the President. And I can see from experience after experience about how well the Secretary is respected within the administration, with the President, with other key actors, and on Capitol Hill, the relationships that we've got. And of course, trying to support you all with the resources that you need in order to get your jobs done. A part of the resources, of course, is making sure that we can hire, and we can hire quickly, and we can hire effectively to make sure that you all have the staff that you need to pull off the incredibly important missions that you've been given. So that's a fourth bucket, if you will, of how we're trying to support. And then a fifth one I just wanted to specifically emphasize is with our colleagues working at our national labs. The Secretary and I both met with the national, with the group of the national lab directors all together, the NLDC, so-called. I've been meeting one-on-one with all the national lab directors. I've now met 16 of the 17. My 17th will hopefully be over the next day or two along those lines. And it's key what a huge asset we have in all of you, not just the facilities, but more importantly, the public service, all that you're bringing to the table. And you need to be an integral and an integrated part of our full DOE team. And so that is certainly our goal, and we've got a lot of actionable ideas to make sure that's the case going forward. So 5 specifics for you all. Let me just echo what the Secretary said on the tremendous progress that we've made so far in the 100 days and a few extra weeks beyond that at that key milestone. But certainly from my end and the Secretary and all of us, I think we all feel this. There's so much more potential. There's so much more potential that we can all, working together, achieve for the American people and for the world. So I am firmly convinced this is a golden age for DOE. This needs to be a golden age or even a platinum age for DOE, and look forward to working with all of you to achieve that full potential. Madam Secretary, back over to you.
Great, thank you, Dave. Dave, you know, for those of you who don't know Dave Turk, he is such a good human. I'm so grateful, Dave, that you are in the position and that you are driving these changes as well, bearing terrific results already. So now we're gonna back the lens up and we're gonna take a look at what is happening on the international level, because we are back in it. The United States is back in the Paris Accord, and we are trying to make up for lost time. So I'm going to turn it over to the Director for the Office of International Science and Technology Collaboration, Maria DeJulian, for more. Maria?
Thank you. My name is Maria DeJulian, and I'm the Office Director for International Science and Technology Collaboration. It is wonderful to follow Deputy Secretary Turk, because, you know, everybody knows he has a well-known and obvious expertise in international matters. I've been with the Office of International Affairs since 2013, and this is a very exciting and impactful time to be working on these issues. In the first 100 days, our team has reimagined the Office of International Affairs to meet the administration's goals of inspiring the world to act on climate and to change the course the world is on. President Biden called us to action through his climate executive order, his own bilateral discussions with global partners, and his Leaders Summit on Climate. At that summit, over 40 heads of state gathered to announce aggressive climate ambition. Next slide, please. Secretary Granholm headlined the innovation session and explained our plans to unite over shared challenges and engage in fearless innovation to accomplish these goals. We are the solutions agency, and you're going to hear from us all year, from our work on island nation resiliency to our long-term strategies to reach global net zero emissions at the Net Zero Producer Forum. But that's not all. This month, we will lead at the G7 Climate and Environment Ministers meeting, followed by the Clean Energy and Mission Innovation Ministerials, where nearly 30 international partners will announce efforts to develop and deploy cutting-edge technologies. Next year, Secretary Granholm will host SEM and MI. This U.S. leadership, combined with her chairing of the International Energy Agency's ministerial, provides us with a historic opportunity to shape the broader international clean energy architecture as we move forward. This road, from the Climate Summit to the G7 to Mission Innovation and SEM, leads to COP26 in Glasgow, our biggest opportunity this year to set a path to fulfill the President's goals around clean energy solutions. And we are reimagining our bilateral efforts as well. From India and Japan to many others, we are focusing these engagements on the climate and clean energy agenda. There's no other agency better positioned than DOE to engage in these efforts, and no agency more willing to take up the President's charge to lead the way on clean energy-focused international efforts. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Maria. Let me tell you, the world really is, at least in my experience and talking with my counterparts across the globe, they are breathing a huge sigh of relief knowing the United States is recommitted to climate action. So thank you for that. And of course, as we make these commitments, we have to make good on those commitments on lowering carbon emissions and making clean energy viable for people all over the world. And that's why we've laid out these plans to broaden our use of wind energy and make solar the absolute cheapest source of power on the planet. And so with that, Kelly Speaks-Bachman, our Principal Deputy Assistant for EERE. She's got more. Kelly, turn it over to you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Great to see everyone. Well, first, just to start off, in order to reach our goal of a fully decarbonized power sector, we all know we need a lot more wind and solar power on the grid, as well as the other technologies. In the first 100 days, we started to set that path to get there by announcing a 2-cent solar cost target, a 30 gigawatt of offshore wind target, and more targets that are going to come that we're going to support our efforts in decarbonization. And it's not just targets that we've done, but in the first 100 days, or I think we're at 117 right now, from January 20th up to about last week, we announced $362 million in potential funding and awarded close to $124 million. So first, let's take a look at why the cost targets are really critical to our progress. On the left, you see wind capacity in the US in 2006. And I hear that our EERE staff had a running bet as to when anyone other than Texas and California might crack a 1 gigawatt mark. We reached that 10 gigawatt mark in August of last year. As of last year, on the right, we have 20 states with over a gigawatt and 33 gigawatts in Texas alone. But the reality is this is not near enough, at least not if we're going to be getting to that goal of fully decarbonizing by 2035. So to do that, we've got to increase wind by about 5 times. That's like 500 to 600 gigawatts total. And while policies can be a major driver, the best way to do this and to do it durably is to make sure that the wind is the most cost competitive source of power on the grid. Solar as well, but we'll talk about that next. So going to the next one, we need to bring down these costs even more. We have made a ton of progress. The average cost was $60 a megawatt hour in the 1980s, and is as much as $10 around 2000, around the turn of the century, and now it's down to $3.70 without subsidies. So, but as you can see here, costs that are low are still limited to a relatively small part of the country, the absolute best wind resources in the US. By 2025, our goal is to bring costs down for land-based wind to get to 2.7 cents and offshore wind to 7 to 9 cents. And if we can do that, we can see how low cost wind over most of the middle third of the US. By 2030, wind is fully low-cost resource nationwide, and offshore wind, which is always going to be a little bit more expensive, becomes competitive with higher electricity prices on both coasts. So turning to solar, it's the same story. It's a really awesome story. In 2006, installed solar capacity was less than a gigawatt, with state deployment non-existing or reaching only megawatt scale levels in nearly all states. And now we have more than a gigawatt deployment in several states. Using a different metric this time, we can see how reducing costs can translate into a nationwide spread of cost competitive solar. So as we reach 3 cents by 2025, we'll see the Sun Belt fill in and begin to expand northward. And then as we reach 2 cents, you'll see more low-cost solar deployed in all states and to significant levels, like more than 10 gigawatts in multiple southern and midwestern states particularly. So just closing this out, if we're going to get to 100%, this is what we need: truly cost competitive wind and solar across the whole country. And this is just the beginning. The costs aren't the only barrier. We've got to push on all fronts to deploy the technologies that we have. So this is the future we're working towards, one where you don't have to choose between clean power and affordable power, where wind and solar are the most affordable and most accessible resources in the country. So thanks for hearing me out.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. I love this. We are making these investments are going to be game changers for clean energy deployment. So super exciting that you guys are all over this. But we also know that without further advancements in those technologies, we can still take major leaps toward our goals in climate action and energy adoption. In fact, a study by DOE's Nrel showed that in the city of Los Angeles, they can get to almost 100% clean electricity by the end of this decade, simply by deploying the clean tech that we already have. So here to tell us about that particular study and about our engagement across the state and local stakeholders is Nrel's Associate Lab Director for Energy Systems Integration, Juan Torres. Juan?
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Let me get this presentation going. All right. So as we all know, we are striving towards President Biden's infrastructure plan to reach 100% carbon-free electricity by 2035. And to reach this goal, we'll need to help communities across the country translate this ambition into action. So where do we start? We believe that we've developed the blueprints to get there through a partnership with the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, which is the nation's largest municipal utility, serving over 4 million residents and businesses. The study is named LA 100. It's the most comprehensive study of its kind, which is why we're so excited. It started with the LA City Council setting a goal to produce 100% of its power through renewables by 2045. They quickly realized that they needed help with detailed data and analysis. So they came to Nrel because they know that as a DOE national lab, we can do this in a way that's community tailored, science-based, and technology agnostic. We now have a method that communities across the nation can apply to decarbonize their power systems rapidly and equitably. The study included simulations with resolution to the individual building level. Look at this visualization that zooms into how LA's electricity demand changes over time, including loads from electric vehicles and buildings. Our results now give the city of LA confidence to reach its goal through multiple pathways, all of which include deployment of wind, solar, batteries, and new transmission in the next decade. And they can achieve 100% renewables and 100% reduction in the power sector emissions by 2035, a decade sooner than the original target and in line with President Biden's plan. What's more, they know they needed to do this reliably. So our model subjected LA's grid to multiple stresses, such as wildfires that could take out transmission lines or increase demand during a heat wave. Even with all this data, we didn't lose sight of the most important element, the people who live, work, and breathe in the city. The LA 100 study offers new insights into how we can improve energy equity and bring the community along when building out clean power infrastructure. A national energy transformation will not be easy, but if the second largest city in the US can do it, we know others can too. We now have the tools and experience to give communities localized roadmaps for decarbonization. We look forward to working closely with DOE to make sure the seed we planted with LA blossoms into national impact. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Juan. I love this tool because what they really did was build out a tool that other cities can use. You'd have, very localized inputs, and you get an output, and every city can adopt this tool and get the kind of roadmap that they did for Los Angeles. So I get more hopeful every time. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
You know that we're keeping the future safe in more ways than one, and our critical efforts to maintain and modernize our nation's nuclear weapons, that doesn't always make news, and that's okay, but it just means that our NNSA, our National Nuclear Security Administration, is absolutely on top of things. And they've got incredibly important milestone to tell us about today. They have prepared a video for us to explain their milestone. So let's hear it from the NNSA. I know we got it. don't know if I can't hear. I don't know if that's muted or not. Should we try it one more?
It was muted. They're trying one more time.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Summer Jones. I am the Assistant Deputy Administrator for Production Modernization within the NNSA Office of Defense Programs. Prior to joining NNSA 8 years ago, I spent a few years in the White House and in private industry and about a decade on active duty in the U.S. Navy. For those of you who don't know, NNSA's defense programs maintains and modernizes our nation's nuclear weapons. What does that mean? Well, here's a few facts. First, a lot of people associate nuclear weapons with the Department of Defense. In reality, we at DOE and NNSA actually own the weapons. And dating back to the Manhattan Project, we own all the infrastructure that builds and maintains them. That includes not only our 3 national laboratories, but also a vast production complex. DoD establishes the military requirements for the weapons in the stockpile, and NNSA's nuclear security enterprise delivers them. Second, today's stockpile is the smallest it has been since 1960. We haven't conducted any underground testing in almost 3 decades. So, to ensure that the weapons are safe, secure, reliable, and effective, NNSA has to do a lot of care and feeding. That means routine maintenance, periodic repair, replacement of limited life components, and like human beings, a thorough annual health examination. Most of the nuclear weapons in the stockpile were produced during the 1950s and 60s, and they were not designed to last forever. To extend their service life, we conduct science-based assessments of each weapon type and its components. Third, many of the buildings in which the weapons are made also date back to the Manhattan Project. For many components and materials, we are our own industrial base. We are responsible for modernizing not just the weapons, but also the facilities and equipment that are needed to modernize the nuclear weapons stockpile. I'd like to give you a timely example of our responsibility and why we are celebrating an incredibly important milestone. A key part of a nuclear warhead is the plutonium pit, a spherical shell of plutonium about the size of a bowling ball. During the Cold War, the U.S. produced approximately 1,000 pits per year at the Rocky Flats plant in Colorado. Since its closure in 1992, the U.S. hasn't had the capability to manufacture at the rate needed to replace aging pits with new ones. Plutonium is a difficult material to work with and process. It requires highly specialized facilities, equipment, and personnel to meet important safety and security requirements. In 2018, in coordination with the DoD, we developed a 2-site approach that recapitalizes existing infrastructure at Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico and repurposes the former MOX facility at the Savannah River site in South Carolina to meet this critical national priority mission. Recent federal law and DoD requirements have mandated the production of no fewer than 80 plutonium pits per year. The U.S. needs to reestablish the capability to produce, at a modest capacity, plutonium pits to ensure the long-term effectiveness of the U.S. nuclear deterrent. Implementing a moderately sized pit manufacturing capability provides the ability to address plutonium pit aging concerns, improve warhead safety and security, and respond to challenges to our deterrent based on renewed peer competition. In the last 100 days, we are pleased to have reached a key milestone in the formal project management process DOE uses to review and manage large infrastructure projects. With the authorization of the Deputy Secretary, we recently announced the approval of the Critical Decision 1 milestone for the Los Alamos Pit Production Project. This marks the approval of the selected alternative, cost range, and the completion of the conceptual design phase. So today we appreciate the opportunity to highlight this important 100-day accomplishment as a key milestone toward achieving the two-site pit production strategy. This is an incredible accomplishment enabled by the best and brightest workforce in the nation. We will continue to work hard every single day to ensure the United States maintains a diverse set of nuclear capabilities that can provide flexible, tailored options to achieve national security objectives. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Summer. And I don't know about you, but I feel safer knowing that our fantastic NNSA team is so capable. I want to give a special shout out to Dr. Charlie Verdon, who has led this with such a steady hand since 2018. I know now more about plutonium pits than I ever thought I would. So thank you so much, not just for this video, but for what you're doing every single day. I want to turn it over now to Ike White, who's our acting assistant secretary for the Office of Environmental Management, and he is joining us to share the EM strategic vision. Ike.
Thank you. I'm excited to share a little about the future of the environmental management program this afternoon. But before I talk about the vision for the future, I want to talk briefly about the past. I spent most of my career with DOE focused on the nuclear weapons mission, a mission that changed the course of history and left a legacy of peace around the globe. The legacy of ending World War II with the Manhattan Project. The legacy of winning the Cold War and continuing to ensure our national security. And the legacy of our DOE labs, which began with investments in nuclear energy and weapons research, and then became the crown jewels of this country's science and technology infrastructure. DOE scientists have changed the world. While our predecessors focused on maintaining peace and building prosperity, an environmental legacy was also created. By the end of the Cold War, we had over 100 sites across 35 states involved in some aspect of nuclear weapons production or nuclear energy research, from the Nevada desert to downtown New York City, from Washington State to Florida. These activities left a legacy of 100 million gallons of liquid radioactive waste, millions of cubic meters of solid radioactive waste, thousands of tons of spent nuclear fuel and special nuclear material, huge quantities of contaminated soil and water, and thousands of contaminated and aging facilities. This is the legacy entrusted to the Office of Environmental Management. And we've made extraordinary progress in the past 3 decades, with cleanup completed at 91 sites. An entire uranium enrichment complex, once the largest building in the world under one roof, has been demolished. We opened the nation's first deep geologic repository for radioactive waste and transferred over 25,000 acres of clean land to communities. While we've had tremendous success, we have much more to do. EM's new 10-year strategy outlines a clear path to some of the most impressive cleanup accomplishments yet. In the next 10 years, we will begin treatment of radioactive waste stored in underground tanks at Hanford and complete all liquid waste treatment at Idaho and most at Savannah River. These accomplishments alone will reshape the mission, as this tank waste represents the largest environmental liability in the U.S. government. We'll transform skylines by completing key demolition efforts, such as the last major facility at the West Valley site and 2 of the 3 former uranium enrichment buildings at Portsmouth. We'll complete cleanup at 4 sites, and so much more. I'm excited for all we have planned. As our strategic vision is realized, we are writing the continued history of this effort, a legacy of protecting the environment and restoring communities who served our nation for decades. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the environmental management program this afternoon.
Great. Thanks, Ike. These are such major projects, and cleaning them up for those communities is so important. That strategic planning process is a model for the complex. So thank you so much for sharing it. So now I think y'all know by now I'm kind of obsessed with creating jobs in clean energy, and I believe in my bones that this transition to clean energy is going to be a boon for good paying jobs. And that'll be so important to the communities who are on the edge of the energy transition. We're already seeing the potential through the work that we've done for coal and power plant communities. And I'm going to let Brian Anderson, who is the director of DOE's National Energy Technology Laboratory, share some more. Brian.
Great. Thank you so much, Madam Secretary. In the President's executive order on climate change on January 27th, the President made a commitment to energy communities saying, we're never going to forget the men and women who dug the coal and built the nation. We're going to do right by them and make sure they have opportunities to keep building the nation in their own communities and getting well paid for it. I'm here to talk about that effort today being led by the Department of Energy because the DOE was charged in that executive order on tackling the climate crisis to write an initial report to assess existing authorities available to the entire federal government to support coal, oil, and gas and power plant communities as they transition. So I'm truly honored to be named the executive director of the IWG and to represent the Department of Energy on this. So everyone's aware, coal to mining employment declined from more than 175,000 in 1985 to 40,000 in 2020. And power generation now, which used to provide about half of the nation's electricity from 1950 to 2008, produced about 23%. So as we continue to decarbonize our electricity sector by 2035, we know that many of the aging plants will create job losses in communities where the loss of a tax base will also mean that schools must close. And many of these areas are remote and don't have infrastructure like broadband that we've all come to depend on during COVID. The Interagency Working Group staff reviewed models of success to learn from the past and held listening sessions with unions, philanthropies, community economic development organizations, tribal and private sector stakeholders, and we learned a lot that went into the report. So there's a true accomplishment in the first 100 days was all of this work and the release of a report on April 23rd, where the Department of Energy announced $109.5 million in funding that are going to support innovative projects that retain and rebuild jobs in these energy communities. And so on the next slide, we have developed some guiding principles in the Interagency Working Group. These guiding principles are to create good paying jobs and family-sustaining careers for these communities, to provide federal investment to catalyze economic revitalization and support energy workers through benefits and the opportunities, as well as mitigate pollution and remediate our past. We are adopting a whole of government approach and formalizing stakeholder engagement all across the country. We identified 25 priority energy communities, largely based on analysis by NETL's Kelly Rose and Jen Bauer. The 25 regions are related to the areas of the country with the deepest coal employment, and they're closely related to the areas that have suffered the most losses of coal mines and coal power plant jobs over the last 15 years. We identified up to $38 billion in potential funding across the 11 federal agencies involved in the Interagency Working Group. These range from infrastructure build-out, such as broadband, to clean energy, such as carbon capture and sequestration, through fossil energy feed studies and loan program office loans, to environmental remediation, like EPA brownfields and the Department of Interior Surface Reclamation Program, and finally to economic development through the Department of Commerce, EDA, and Appalachian Regional Commission. So we have a robust set of next steps, including several subcommittees to guide our investments, our coordination, integration, and policy, and we're also assessing the suitability of FACA committees and initiating a listening tour to the 25 priority communities, as well as many others in the coal, power plant, oil, gas, and energy communities that will see an economic dislocation and transition over the coming years. I look forward to hosting the Secretary on a visit to one of these energy communities. And so last is a call to action. We welcome collaboration and input on the initial report that's been made public. And we understand that lots of additional analysis needs to be done. Tools and approaches may exist across the Department of Energy complex that can be leveraged, and the program offices and the national labs across the Department of Energy have stakeholder relationships that I would love to leverage, and additional funding opportunities and budget and policy formulations that can be developed. I'd love to provide an acknowledgement to the National Energy Technology Laboratory staff, Karen Skelton, the Senior Advisor to Madam Secretary, the Interagency Working Group staff, Jahi Wise and Nellie Abernathy at the White House, and the broader Department of Energy for our contributions. And so we're committed at NETL to realizing the President's vision and your vision, Madam Secretary, and we look forward to working with you to bring a whole of government approach to delivering impact to these communities. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Brian. For everybody else, it's really I don't know, impactful, I would say, knowing that Brian he's from West Virginia. He comes from a coal miner family, and it's real. His seeing the loss of jobs is real for him, and it's not just obviously in West Virginia, it's in communities all across the country. So this is just such important work, and I want to thank everybody who has worked on it, and importantly, who will work on it over the next 926 days that we have, for sure. So it's invigorating to think about how the work can actually lift up communities, but it's not just through jobs. I mean, for lower income families, high energy bills could leave them choosing between keeping the house cool in the summer or paying for groceries. But we know that it doesn't have to be that way. We can free up money for essentials like food and healthcare and childcare by improving energy efficiency in consumer products. So one way we're doing that, of course, is through appliance standards. Our bread and butter. I'll let Ashley Armstrong of the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy explain that. Ashley? Are you there? Ashley, you may be muted. I saw you. I know you're there.
Let's try one more time.
There we go. Awesome.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Madam Secretary. I appreciate it. Good afternoon. My name is Ashley Armstrong, and I'm a senior advisor in the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, focusing on regulatory policy and the built environment. I'm excited to be here today to talk about one of the most effective programs at the U.S. Department of Energy to improve energy efficiency. The Appliance Standards Program was initially authorized to develop, revise, and implement minimum energy efficiency standards back in 1975. Since its inception, the Appliance Standards Program has been a huge success, saving almost 130 quadrillion BTUs of energy through 2030, or about 30% more than the U.S. uses in a single year. The Appliance Standards Program currently sets policy regulations for more than 60 products, representing about 90% of home energy use, 60% of commercial building energy use, and 30% of industrial energy use. The program is highly effective. The cumulative utility bill savings to consumers are estimated to be more than $1 trillion by 2020 and more than $2 trillion by 2030. These savings create jobs when they are redeployed into sectors of the economy that are more labor intensive than the utility sector. In addition to consumer utility bill savings, the Standards Program has driven remarkable innovation in household appliances and equipment. For example, today, the typical new refrigerator uses 44% less energy than in 1990, despite offering 15% more storage capacity and being available at half the retail cost. All told, these efficiency gains translate into large dollar savings. A typical household saves about $464 per year off their utility bills as a result of appliance standards. The Biden-Harris administration inherited a large backlog of statutory missed deadlines, but DOE is committed to ensure the Appliance Standards Program is once again operational. In the first 100 days, DOE has published over 24 Federal Register notices to help jumpstart the program and begin work on revised processes, test procedures, and standards rulemakings. Improved efficiency standards are crucial for reaching the President's goals in energy efficiency and decarbonizing buildings. I'm excited to see the progress that the Appliance Standards Program can make, beginning with the accomplishments of the first 100 days. These standards will save money to consumers and improve our environment. Thank you for your time today.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. I love these stats. First of all, that you're reinvigorating the appliance standards, and that, what is it, families save $464 a year just on appliances. That's not even talking about energy efficiency in the home, apart from that in the building. And then that the appliances that you showed there have between 50 and 80% efficiency, using 50 to 80% less energy. Very exciting. So, all right, next up, Tracy Lebeau, Interim Administrator and Chief Executive Officer of the Western Area of Wapa, the Western Area Power Administration. Wapa has made a couple of major announcements since January that are going to really prove essential in our efforts to achieve President Biden's energy goals. Tracy, tell us the news.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We're so pleased today to share updates from Western Area Power Administration on energy markets and on financing transmission infrastructure. So just to remind folks, WAPA is about 2,000 utility professionals strong, whose mission it is to market and deliver hydro from 57 dams. We market that power across 15 states to more than 700 wholesale customers that deliver the power to over 40 million Americans. So speaking of hydro marketing, a few years ago, we noticed some trends. One is that our historical energy marketing counterparties were joining organized electricity markets and diminishing in number. Mind you, the industry's historical model is that each utility maintains its own operations and energy supply, matching generation with demand. Organized energy markets are consolidating these independent efforts so as to schedule and deliver energy more efficiently and more economically across larger footprints using market pricing and incentives. Analyzing these trends and making a business case, WAPA very successfully joined one of these markets a few years ago, placing the majority of our Upper Great Plains transmission system into the Southwest Power Pool, a regional transmission organization composed of both a day-ahead and real-time market, and using locational marginal pricing for efficient market clearing and transmission congestion management. Fast forward to this year, and energy imbalance markets have risen in the West and emerging to resolve real-time imbalances between supply and demand, providing participants with balancing through efficient real-time market clearing prices, in addition to existing bilateral day-ahead markets. So in the first 100 days of the administration, 4 of WAPA's 5 regions successfully went live in energy imbalance markets, 3 of them joining the SPP's Western Energy Imbalance Service and 1 joining the California ISO's Western Energy Imbalance Market. I really want to applaud the dedicated WAPA employees across our entire enterprise who collaborated and worked tirelessly to shift us into these markets seamlessly. And we just recently announced that several WAPA regions operating in energy imbalance markets are now formally exploring regional transmission organization membership options in partnership with our customers, which could add centralized day-ahead markets to existing real-time markets. So next, we were pleased to be highlighted a few weeks ago to underscore the department's commitment to deploying infrastructure and the revitalization of WAPA's Transmission Infrastructure Program, or TIP. TIP is our $3.25 billion revolving loan fund for commercially deployed transmission infrastructure. Created and charged by Congress to advance transmission and related projects, the goal is to facilitate the delivery of renewable energy. Investors and developers value not only this low-cost capital, but they have also leveraged our 17,000 plus miles of high voltage transmission presence in the West and our expertise. The photos you see are a great example of that in a successful project financed by TIP. So thanks again to the department for highlighting this unique public-private partnership program. We share the commitment to accelerate expansion and modernization of the grid, create good paying jobs, and increase access to reliable, affordable, clean power. That's, in a word, powerful. So now back to you.
Thanks, Tracy. Love that TIP program, $3.5 billion. Gotta love it. All right, WAPA and our PMAs, they can obviously lead the way as we make these big investments in our transmission system. So thanks so much for your leadership, Tracy. Okay, we've got one more presentation. There's a big one. Since January 20th, I want you to know that we put out dozens and dozens of funding opportunities and grants. They're all aimed at driving research and development and deployment of these cutting edge technologies that we need to compete in the 21st century global economy, and we need to win. So nobody knows the extent of these FOAs and grants better than the Office of Public Affairs. They've been yelling from the proverbial hilltops. They've been posting from their laptops about every dollar that we've put out practically every single day. And they, I think, have a video telling us about the scale of these investments. Let's see it.
We do. Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Hello, and welcome to ENN Today. I'm Charisma Troiano. Our top story, the Department of Energy has announced that they have invested over $1.3 billion in grants and funding opportunities for energy innovation projects this year. This stunning achievement came just 100 days into the Biden-Harris administration's term. According to DOE sources, this money will supercharge the country's R&D and deployment of clean technologies. For more on this, we have Anthony Martinez out in the field. Anthony?
Hello, Charisma from the coast of New England, which will soon be the site of the country's latest foray into offshore wind. Thanks in part to an $8 million investment by the Department of Energy for offshore wind R&D and $3 billion in available loans to scale offshore wind projects, that money will soon make President Biden's goal of reaching 100% clean electricity by 2035 a breeze.
Thrilling stuff, Anthony. And joining us now is our senior transportation correspondent, David Mayorga. David, I understand that a major focus of these investments is in sustainable vehicle technology.
That's right, Charisma. In fact, about $100 million of that $1.3 billion is going to the third iteration of the massively successful Super Truck program, which produced the big rig you can see behind me. DOE is hoping that money will support breakthroughs in electrifying medium and heavy-duty trucks. As transportation creates the country's largest share of carbon emissions, Super Truck 3 could really drive the country that much closer to the administration's net zero target.
Remarkable. And according to
Charisma?
Yes, Anthony.
The department is also very excited about the nearly $110 million they've awarded to retain and rebuild jobs around technologies like carbon capture within coal communities like this one in West Virginia.
You're in West Virginia?
Take me home, country roads.
How did you just get there from the coast of New England?
Sorry, Charisma, that announcement is still under embargo.
Right. And according to DOE, the $1.3 billion in funding also covers projects focused on methane emissions reductions, next generation battery storage and solar cells, clean hydrogen, and apparently much more. Coming up, as Americans eye the return to in-person work on the horizon, many are wondering if it's time for sweatpants to be designated as office friendly. ENN investigates. Then, are you getting enough sleep? All this and more after the break.
Oh, very cute. I am all about the sweatpants. Thanks so much, David. My big thanks to the Office of Public Affairs for that and for the real coverage that you've generated around that $1.3 billion in grants and funding opportunities. So that brings us to the close of our own town hall here. What's clear to me is that there is a lot to be proud of, certainly across every part of the DOE enterprise after just 100 days and 2 weeks. This agency has done so much for so many people in such a short period. I hope that makes you as eager and energized to tackle the next 100 days as I am. You make this the best job in the world and the best agency in federal government, bar none. Thank you all so very much.